Okay, so the muscles you really want to grow, you use X3 with. When you have a muscle that you don't give a shit about, then lift weights, because that you'll get no results. I think Trump's a little too liberal for me, honestly. Like I'm just to the right of Genghis Khan. Like really? That's how we're going to carry shit around on the back of our necks? Idiotic.
All right, brother. Back with Dr. J from X3 Bar. You guys have seen him on the channel. This might be the third or fourth interview. And I got to always preface this that it's not like, why the hell do I have Dr. J on all the time? It's because I like talking to him. You guys are into resistance bands. I use his product. I also find him super entertaining. He's also, I always want to give him this guy props. He doesn't say this enough. And some people think he's just maybe not honest. I think he's totally honest, maybe too honest, honestly. Because as soon as I get on the phone with this guy, we're just rambling about all sorts of stuff. He's a passionate dude. And what I give props to him about is that I talk to a lot of different companies and owners, and a lot of them, when I say like, hey, let's get into this, or can I ask you this question? Like, I'd rather you not, go into that. I don't want to go into that. You were probably the only guy who would just like say it as it is. As far as a business owner that I've met, that could care less about what the heck I'm going to ask you, and it's totally uncensored. So,
well, if you think of the question, then others will think of the question, and everybody deserves to have their questions answered. I mean, people can, like, I get all kinds of crazy questions. And, like if you wanted to ask me about anabolics or, my degree or what, whatever, like the detractors that are out there, their tool is really lying. Like, oh, he's definitely on steroids. Like, well, yeah, you say that. People say that about every 14-year-old kid with a visible bicep vein. So, no, sorry. I mean, they say that about you too. Yeah, you're totally natural. Like, the
reason I wanted to have you on, I want to set this up in the beginning, and I'm going to have you just go to the rails here. Is people ask a lot of questions about this. This being a big one is why I want to have you on, because you made the X3 Hypertrophy Program, which is a little bit different program than what you originally had.
Right.
And I think you really, I'm not just blowing smoke here. And I've been critical. I've said tons of pros. There's also cons. I tell John honestly about how I use his product. As much as I cover resistance band stuff, it's still the go-to device I use for a number of things, really, because I think the dimensions are just perfect for me for traveling and just picking it up as an accessory to add between different workouts and sets and things like that. But you originally had a program that I think was so simple. And I think it was kind of genius because it gave people a method to kind of use something that was just take the thinking out. Let me just do it when I can do it. I know a guy who owns a big company. He's big into free weights. It's not, he doesn't sell free weights, but he basically knows a lot about resistance training, been in the game a long time. He uses X3 religiously. And I said to him, like, why are you using this? He's like, it's just so simple. My body looks pretty much the same. I get a compliment of my body all the time. And I just use that setup. It's just so easy. And that's probably the best answer most people can kind of ask. But you change the program around to do something that's more, instead of higher intensity to failure, one set, I think it was like a 15-minute-ish workout on just a simple card. Now you put together this hypertrophy workout, and that spun a lot of questions that I've had, I'm sure you've gotten, which is, can you basically build mass using resistance bands, especially something with an X3? And so kind of big loop down in question here. Why did you make that hypertrophy program? And this is probably a third question here. I'm sure you get this question all the time. People ask you, like, do you actually just use this as your own workout program? Do you supplement with weights still? So loaded question. That was horrible setup. How do you use, what's the hypertrophy program? Do you recommend it for yourself and everybody else? And just kind of have at it with that.
So I haven't touched anything with real use. Like, I mean, I went to Matt Wenning's gym in Cleveland, Ohio, and I tried his variable resistance squat machine, which is awesome. But it's, it's a big machine. Like you're not going to bring it with you when you travel. So other than like one time trying something, and that I made a video of it, it'll be in a documentary film coming out. I'm X3 only, and I'm really hell bent on proving the point. Variable resistance is outrageously superior. So when somebody's like, "Oh yeah, I don't want to do bands. I still want to do weights," it's like, part of me is like, okay, you just don't know what I know. Like, otherwise you wouldn't do that. Like, people are like, well, don't you want to bench every once in a while? For what? Like, it's an inefficient stimulus. It's, the chance of injury, especially with how strong I am, if it's going to be relevant to my strength, I could tear a pec or something like that. I'm 48 years old. I don't know. So,
I was gonna get into that later, so I was gonna ask you if you still stand by everything you wrote in this book, but I guess that's
oh
100%.
yeah,
So that's 100%.
yeah. The key to this is really not ever getting into a position where there's no load in the stretched range of motion. People who've been following some of the bodybuilding talking points, that's everybody's running around like a half jacked off dog talking about, oh, you need to have load at the stretched position. And it's like, okay, hold up for a second. Every single set of every single thing anyone has ever done with a weight, they went to fatigue in their weak range of motion, which is also the lengthened range of motion. So, like, is that the magic range of motion? No, it's just where we go to fatigue. So, is there something special about that range of motion? Well, we do go to fatigue there. So, when I looked at that sort of new take on how we stimulate muscle growth, it's like, well, you only need to exercise the lengthened part of the musculature. And the band criticism had always been, well, when you train with bands, you don't load the bottom. Like the band goes slack at the bottom. Yeah, that's true with somebody who's just buying a bag of bands at Walmart. But X3 is designed so that that doesn't happen. The width of the plate, the ground plate that you stand on, is specific. The length of the bar is specific because that chews up a lot of the length of the band so that it guarantees in all the prescribed exercises that you get a shit ton of loading at the bottom. And at the top, the loading is like numbers you wouldn't even think you'd ever be able to lift. But remember, you're 7 times stronger here than you are here. So that was part of the premise of weightlifting is a waste of time, the book.
There's so much I want to say here, but if I'm just gonna re-hit all the same stuff we got into. So I definitely want to stay on to the hypertrophy stuff, the new program, because that's, I guess, maybe the other thing I've heard. People that are into resistance bands, and I think a lot of this is from what you're doing too, seem to be also really in line with, or I don't know if everybody's like this, but more in line with that kind of high intensity. Well, I'm just going to do one set to kind of to failure. I know you were a big promoter of that, just doing one all out set, then finishing with the partials. And now some people have been kind of accusing, well, it seems like that guy I mentioned at the start, he was saying, well, it seems like Dr. J kind of, backpedaled or maybe kind of caved into some of the criticism. I don't know if that's true or not true, but maybe what was the rationale for doing the new program or the hypertrophy program versus sticking to the one set, and maybe tee up what the original program was and then what the new one is?
So in the beginning, when I first rolled this product out, I knew I wasn't going to target it at like a fitness audience. I was really looking for the audience of people who really felt like fitness failed them. And I wanted to get the greatest effect. In medicine, they talk about the minimum dose response. Like, what's the minimum amount of acetaminophen, Tylenol, that's going to get rid of your pain and then have the least negative impact, which is typically in the liver. So turns out it's anywhere from 350 milligrams to 750 milligrams. Right. So you don't want to take a gram of that stuff and you don't want to take 5 milligrams either. So when I looked at the high intensity approaches, like variable resistance is high intensity by nature. Like you're getting in every set you do, you go to fatigue multiple times. So one X3 set can be sort of like 3 to 4 regular sets because like if I'm doing a chest press, I'm doing however many I can do, and then I go to fatigue here, and I can't get it any further, and then I do a couple reps, and then I can't get it here, and then so like the reps get shorter because I'm always going to wherever the maximum distance is. Well, this means I'm getting to momentary muscular fatigue multiple times in one set. Therefore, if you have very limited time and you do that one set with multiple fatigue points, you're getting the benefit of doing a lot of volume, or, let's say the minimum amount of volume that would be considered a hypertrophy program. However, once the device was accepted by the fitness community, Well, now we can start applying it in different ways. So at first it was sort of like I needed to get it out there so that enough people were like, oh, I totally need that because it's going to save me time. It's going to give me great results. And yeah, I don't know how much I bench when I'm using it, but like I'm not 14 anymore. So who gives a shit? Because it's really just sort of kids with Napoleon complex and just care about that kind of shit. So I wanted to just optimized for the people who were time constrained. Now I'm looking at different protocols. Like I started picking up some of the protocols from the NFL guys that were using it. And they're like, oh yeah, I mean, I know you don't like this, but we do multiple sets. And I'm like, great. What kind of results are you getting? Now, the way I handle the typical customer and the way I handle like strength and conditioning coach, totally different. Because the average person knows less than nothing, i.e., they're mostly trafficking in misinformation, which the fitness industry is absolutely jam-packed with, just stupid shit left and right. So I wanted to cut through that clutter, make my point, and then once there was a critical mass there, once I had like 300,000 or 400,000 users, it's like, okay, now we can start applying it like some of the other training programs with volume, and people will get absolutely spectacular results. Because even if I do, let's say 5 sets per body part, each one of those sets might have 3 fatigue points. Well, that's a little more like 15 sets, which 15 sets per body part means, you per workout, you're like living in the gym. Like that's hours and hours and hours. But it's not with X3. Like instead of 10 minutes, my workouts maybe 35 or 40 minutes. And so
I think you can find those. I'll link those down. Are those all free? Because I know I logged in. Like, could you be a customer to could access those videos? Or they on your YouTube channel?
Customers can access. You have to have
okay.
them.
Okay.
The reason I used to have them wide open, and like the knockoff companies would send their customers to our website.
Okay.
I mean,
it's very good. The production's good. You lay it out there. I did my best when you first did the initial tease to like kind of play with what I thought you were saying. There's some things I lost in translation there, but great production. You lay it out there. Some nice little forms, a lot of good little form tips in there as well. So I'm definitely plugging that. Definitely laid out there. It's tough though. I mean, when you do that, I think it's like, it's 5 sets, super setting back and forth, 20-second rest. So it's no joke. I mean, at the end, there are 5 sets, but they're after the end of doing like those partials, resting 20 seconds, jumping into it. It's tough stuff.
I just did a video. I was on this cobblestone street with Daniel Magyar, who's like the top X3 trainer, and then Dr. Sean Baker. We were in Bratislava for a carnivore conference, and we did the volume training like on the street. And people were walking by. It was funny. It was right in front of the U.S. Embassy, which is hilarious because the Marines who are the guards, the U.S. Embassy, they're like, dude, we have that. And then I was like, oh, cool. Like you don't really want to be the guy yelling in front of an embassy, just in general. Don't ask me how I know that. I mean, I've been the drunk, belligerent guy that just went to high five the Marines in front of the U.S. Embassy in a few different places, and they don't always think you're as nearly as funny as you think you are.
Yeah,
but whatever. And they kept on looking. It was funny because we did this whole volume workout, and they were like, "Yeah, like you're doing too much. Like you only need to do 1 set." And they clearly didn't recognize me. So I was like, "Cool." I came back later, and they were like, "Wait, you're the guy. What the hell are you doing in Bratislava?" And then I told him, and I said, this is a new program, and yes, all the old principles are still intact. There's nothing wrong with them, but we can add some volume. I feel like if I had introduced the product like that, it wouldn't have grown as quickly.
I think you're right. I think for sure you're right. Because I think
it needs to be very, like right out of the box, it needs to be super approachable. 10-minute workout, minimum dose response. Like you're going to get muscular growth. I mean, I went from looking like a regular dude to people stop me in the grocery store and they're like, "Are you in the NFL? Are you a fighter?" Like they all think I'm like a professional athlete. And I'm like, no, I I work with those guys, but I'm not one of them. So that feels really good. And I knew I was on like the right track. Like I got a 10-minute workout 6 days a week, and it's putting muscle mass on not just me, but like hundreds of the users so that they're getting confused for professional strength athletes. That's exactly what I wanted.
So who would you
Now,
recommend that? Who would you recommend someone to follow? Let's say someone's like they're already pretty athletic, they're in shape, and they got the product. Is there a route you'd put them under? And also, I already know the answer to this question, but I had it written down. I got to ask this asked so often to me. But could somebody gain muscle mass just using resistance bands? It's a softball question, I know, but that question is asked so often to me. I thought I'd throw it out to you.
dude, I've gained like
Yeah, I know you can, but I guess
muscle.
I
Like,
don't even know why I asked it.
yeah, I mean,
I guess,
so for
but
those for those that are,
you understand the criticism, I think, is like people see bands. And I said this at the start. I forgot to say this in the beginning. Other than you and Blake Castle, I see the beginning off recording. Other than you and Blake Castle, the owner of Body Elastics, who makes resistance bands, he legitimately hasn't touched a weight. He told me his story, went in the weight room and he like felt weird after using it with his kid traveling or something like that.
Mhm.
You, same deal. Every other company I talk to, it seems that pushing resistance bands or a resistance band influencer type of person,
Mhm.
at least the ones I meet, they're all either using a lot of heavyweight training or it's definitely heavy supplemental. So I think people ask me these questions like, well, is this how you built your body? I say, no, I mean, I use everything, predominantly weights, because that's all I really was used to and
Yeah.
really was accustomed to. But I can't answer that question because I don't really know anybody who's just trained with resistance bands personally. And when I do see people, absolutely no offense, you're kind of an outlier. I mean, I'm not in the community, so I don't see them like all the people using your product, honestly.
Mhm.
But sometimes you see people pushing bands and they're like, they look like they're just more or less dieting and they lost weight and there's just muscle
Oh
that's in there.
yeah, there's
You know what I
that.
mean?
Yeah, yeah.
So
Yeah, so I put on a ton of muscle. I have not touched any other thing for like actual use. I mean, like I've screwed around with some things on video so I could, somebody's like, "Oh, you need to try this," and okay, I'll do a couple reps, but not actual workout. I have not done anything other than X3 since developing the prototype, which is when I turned 40, and I've gained, I think, about 55 pounds of muscle mass since then, most of which was in the first 2 years. Like now it's like, I might put on a pound like here and there, and I'm pushing. Like, I mean, it's volume, it's really heavyweight, crazy heavy. But it's all through the product. I knowing what I know, I would never touch a weight. Like I truly support the statement that's on the front of this book. Weightlifting is a waste of time. You only get to go to fatigue once when you lift weights because you have a weak range, and that's where you go to fatigue, where you're weakest. That's also called the lengthened range. So why not use a system that lets you go to fatigue in first the strong range, and then in the medium range, and then in the weaker range, the lengthened
mhm.
range? So you're getting like triple the stimulus every set you do.
You
Why
ever get
wouldn't
bored though? I mean, someone like you, I mean, you obviously you're well off. You got the funds to do it. I mean, you could have a nice private gigantic gym or don't you ever get tired? Wouldn't you want it? To me, like I love your product. I use it, but I couldn't use it forever. But how do you tackle that itch, I guess?
uh
It doesn't really
it's
matter to you. It's more the efficiency. Obviously, it's your product. You got to push it. So that's a little bit of bias, my opinion. But I mean,
maybe.
that's what I would assume.
I,
Yeah.
I think if I were just a fan, and knowing what I know, right, that's a big caveat. Knowing what I know, yeah, I'm never going to touch a weight unless like there's like a competition or something like that. And somebody challenged me to pick up a car the other day. Uh, it
Well,
wasn't even a lightweight car. It was like just like a large truck. It's just like, dude,
well, how about just a shortcoming of bands like me, other than again, your product it has a certain context that's made a certain way within a certain limitation. There's only so much you can do for a consumer. But you again saying everything that you could have something built for you custom made to say, well, like this exercise and this machine would better hit my whatever calves, quads, hamstrings better than my X3 would. why not do that? It's just maybe not necessary, not a big deal, or that potentially those little smaller things to work aren't. I guess, are there any inherent shortcomings of an X3 that you otherwise could just build out yourself just to promote saying like this? Yeah, I love variable resistance. It's the ideal way. And this is some custom made stuff versus just using an X3.
So I did have that thought. And that's where the squat belt came from.
Okay.
Because after I built it, it was like, oh, holding a bar up here or holding a bar behind your neck, which is, I mean, the concept of squatting in general, it's like, oh, I have something really heavy to pick up. Let me stack it on the back of my neck. Like,
yeah,
what? I mean, I get it. It's a sport. Like, we've been doing it for a long time. We're probably going to do it forever, but really? That's how we're going to carry shit around on the back of our necks? Idiotic. I
disagree with you with some parts of this. I'm
voting for Donald Trump because he says it how it is. I'm just saying.
Yeah. No, I love it. That's
by the way.
Oh yeah, very nice. I love it. Yeah, we're recording this on Election Tuesday, so I don't know when I'll post this. So we will see the different. I could easily right now. My brain's like asking about politics, but I'll try and stay on track here. With the hypertrophy program, is right. You said you developed that with Matt Wenning, which that's an interesting point too, because he's famous powerlifter, obviously big into weights, and that just goes to show, I guess. How do you got? Well, obviously, yeah. I know you're going to say
breaking records with weights, but
yeah, I know you're going to say with that. But is he real? Is he? I've gone on his channel. I see resistance bands, but I don't see him pushing as much variable resistance. Well, I'm not trying to go. I'm just saying. Obviously, there's a relationship there. There's no like he doesn't look at you and be like, well, why are you training with just bands? He doesn't try and push weights on you. Because is he really doing all bands? I don't see that as much.
So he and I discussed this. And no, he did like he never asked me a single time. Said we're really good friends. I absolutely love that guy. He's such a cool dude. So he was like kind of asking like where I kind of decided I was going to make the bar or a certain length and the plate a certain length, and why did you go with these bands? And I think it was we were filming a part of the documentary film that I was talking about, and somebody was like, well, like you don't always train with variable resistance. You don't always train with bands. And, we both kind of looked at the guy and we were like, why wouldn't we? And so he had the same reaction I did. Now, what I would want to impress upon people is what you do for your sport isn't necessarily what you do to prepare for that sport. So like there's all kinds of like I'm working with NBA players and they do so many drills so that they're better at like starting and stopping and slight turns and sprinting in one direction, stopping, changing trajectory without getting any injuries. So it's not like it's like if you imagine an NBA practice where they're just like doing like playing one-on-one, like no, that sounds fun. That's not at all what they do. So when it comes to training, like Matt says, like the weakness of variable resistance, he said, I think I got this on video, or maybe it was just on a phone conversation. I can't remember. But he says, training with bands is really not that exciting. Like, you don't see the weight moving up and down.
Yeah.
So, most people are looking at a video that big on their phone. So it's like, seeing a huge, rack of plates moving back and forth. It's like, wow, that guy's strong. Of course, never mind the fact that in 2024, we have CrossFit plates, which are made out of hollow plastic. Other than that, like it's just not all that exciting. And I agree. Like, stretching a band, like people didn't necessarily wrap their head around that, but they might be like, he's a big guy, but he probably lifts weights, and then he just pulling on these bands. What really changed things was when I made the video. You've seen this, but I don't know if your fans have seen this. Where I'm pushing against load cell. So it was like, oh, it's heavy. Like
Mhm.
that was what people needed to see because they didn't know. And most bands they've seen are like rehab bands or TheraBand, and it's like 5 pounds or 10
Well, I
pounds.
know you might I think I know your response, what you're gonna say to this, but when I was doing a more of a higher stint into bands or just more emphasis in bands, even along with like not just doing as much just traditional barbell free weight training, going back to like I actually am now going back to some more just traditional barbell stuff and
Mhm.
just seeing the numbers going back up to where they were, but definitely knowing like I was weaker in those lifts. So now there's obviously a level of specificity with the barbell training, but some of that I could see. 'Cause I think I know you're going to say with an argument, but I'm saying from let's say a functional practical perspective, if I'm just doing deadlifts with bands, let's say you have to pick up something heavy off the ground. Which one am I more prepared for? The traditional deadlift with weights seems like the better option to me, at least with that. I'm not saying, and
Mm.
again, I don't know if in the grand scheme of
That's a
things in
great
the
question.
context. Go ahead.
And so you're talking about like if it's sports specific training, like if you are a power lifter.
Well, not even. I'm just saying for the everyday person. Like I'm just saying, I was definitely like, using bands with a deadlift with the bands versus deadlifts with a traditional barbell going over 315, 405, whatever. You both can say you're lifting a certain amount of weight in a certain position. Like you can say you're strong in a certain position with a certain apparatus. But I'm saying even just that alone, but then going to a carryover effect. Like if I have to haul something, whatever, I could do something functional. I got to pick up something heavy off the ground just for basic. Now,
Yeah,
is that really
moving
going to pick
bags of
up
cement.
315? Go ahead.
Like moving bags of cement.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah, yeah. Sorry.
yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, for me, because of all the studies on variable resistance, I read them all 50 times and looked for every little nuance, a greater understanding I could have, and even conducted. Well, I didn't conduct it. Sean Conley did. Dr. Sean Conley. I don't know if you've seen that video. So there's a new X3 study where they compared. They had three groups. They had a group that trained weights like Mike Menser, one set. Another group that did the ACSM standard hypertrophy recommendation. So
Sure, that
it's
was good.
something like, say it again.
I'm sure that was good. I mean, I haven't seen that in a while, but usually it's like pretty milk toast. But yeah.
It was like 70 plus sets.
Oh, okay.
Oh, it was like tons of volume, like
Oh,
hours. Like you're training. It was something like 4 or 5 days a week, like 2 hours.
oh, wow. Okay, I wouldn't
Oh
expect that.
yeah. Well, I mean, the American College of Sports Medicine, like they know what they're doing. If they have
Yeah,
a
some of the books though. At least I'm going by like the traditional, the publications like reps is whatever. No offense to them, but well,
yeah.
let me ask you this before I leave the train of thought here. I made a video about this, and this is another, just maybe it's a simplistic, but I think it's relevant to a certain extent. Is I made a video saying one of the weak areas, and that's the potential area where you actually can maybe hurt yourself in a certain way. Because I hear this a lot where people saying, "I'm really strong in bands. I go back to the gym, and weights just feel heavier. I hurt my shoulder," and I'm like, well, they're kind of two different things. And I kind
Right.
of felt that when I go back into benching, the low part of the bench, like, yeah, my shoulder's not as feels weird because I'm not as strong as in that position. So if I were to, I go back to the example when I was a young kid. I made a video about this where I would just do really heavy dumbbell presses, like 100 plus pounds. I don't know about that much, but I would definitely do over 100 right here.
I was
Learn to
gonna
do a
say, dude, make a video of that. That sounds great.
Oh, but yeah, well, I mean, people could do that, but like 90 degrees. But then, like now, going down like here, and now you're gonna do like barbell press. When I first learned to do a barbell press years ago, I was like, man, it's just not good for me. But like reality, I never trained this range of motion. I was always up here. So if I relate that to kind of band training, I say it's maybe there's some elements of that in a certain extent. Where if I'm doing a lot of heavy band training, you might be missing. Let's just say in the bench press, in the best of the day, maybe the deadlift, where like you're not really, you only a certain portion of it is really actually working you, and you're getting some strength. I shouldn't say not strength, but the bottom position might be a little lacking. Obviously, you can go heavier bands. My point is, there might be some range of motion that's getting worked more or
Yeah.
less, like that start position.
It definitely was a concern, and it's a legitimate concern. I mean, you want to be as functionally strong as possible. Now, of course, the most functionally strong people are the ones who break all the strength world records. So we could look at West Side Barbell, who are the people who pioneered band training, and most of the best publications came out of the ideas that were being applied at West Side Barbell. Um, the
And I use them as a defense. So when I get people that hating on bands, like, oh, it's stupid, it's worth what's not, doesn't work, I'll defer that to that all the time. But then
Right.
I'm gonna go back to like, well, maybe couldn't you find a middle ground? I know you have, the hard
Well,
position of bands only, but
so yeah, I definitely have that position,
yeah.
but I can defend it. And like I said, if people knew what I knew, they would never touch a fucking weight again. I made so two things that I think are really important. One is the lengthened partial research, whereas I think like now there've been a couple studies that show lengthened partials give the same results as the full range of motion. Okay, it might be less metabolic stress though, which means you might be able to do more volume when you do lengthened partial only if you're lifting weights. But let's go a little deeper. So I made a set of short bands. So they're like, what are they, like 34-inch bands instead of 41, for specifically the reason of weak range sets or lengthened partial only sets.
I forgot you had those. Those are out already.
Yeah.
I remember we were talking about. Okay,
Yeah, we're shipping them now.
Yeah.
People, if they want to make sure that their weaker range is strong, though, if they train with regular variable resistance, they get the same thing. They can do weak range only and really make sure that they're stimulating that part of the muscle. Again, it carries over. It doesn't matter. But if they need that, if they think they need that, we got we got those shorter bands. And
How about
honestly, for a couple things, like squats, for example, I love lengthened partial only squats because you're just not as systemically exhausted. Like when you do a real heavy squat set to failure, you feel like you're going to die. And if you don't, then you didn't do shit. So like these are the biggest muscles in the body, and you've got to put them to absolute, like, I'm either going to complete this rep or black out. And that's the only way you're really gonna achieve anything great when it comes to lower body strength. But if you do the lengthened partial only sets, you don't train with as much weight. So you maybe go down a band, but the band's shorter. So you really just focus on, you could call it a low bar squat, or people do call it a low bar squat. So you're going lower than parallel and then up just slightly above parallel. So you never fully stand up. And you can train that range of motion with those shorter bands, and it's a lot less systemic torture on the body, but you definitely take the muscle to absolute complete fatigue, and you grow from that. So
how about the rep speed? That was something that was something I checkmarked here when I watched your hypertrophy videos. That seemed like something that maybe did you deviate or change that up a bit? Because I remember it seemed like in the original videos you were big on that. I think it was like a 3-3-3 count, or like 3 seconds up, 3 seconds down. And it seemed like in the other one, it's just a hard one, then like a more of a slower negative.
Yeah, there are some studies that show better results with maybe like a 1 second up, and then you're really focused on the negative when you're coming down with it.
Okay. It just seemed like that was something that was that you more emphasized. At least I thought I remember you emphasizing more in the beginning. And then when I watched the videos, I'm like, that's a more faster cadence. And I could care less. I just hear it so much, especially in the comment section, like especially with band people. There's always like, well, you got to go super, super slow. So that'd be something maybe just address what your thoughts are in cadence, say using resistance bands.
I think it's important when you're like counting repetitions, like you end up speeding up. Like it's just, your subconscious is telling you, like, get this done because it's starting to get hard. So it's easy to talk about. It's not easy to do, especially in those last couple of repetitions. So
right. Okay.
I generally just say 2 up, 2 down.
Okay.
That was what I said in the original. Then there's some research that said exploding upwards and then making it come down real slow. And some of my friends at Westside Barbell are in high support of that. In fact, they do sets where the rest is at the top. So they'll do like 3 rest pause sets, except the rest is when you're just short of like full extension. No, that ain't rest at all. But it's conditioning the central nervous system to hold a lot of weight all the time. So, that's part of why they're doing that. And I mean, that's going to make your progress curve much steeper, as in you're going to get a lot stronger and a lot bigger, a lot faster.
So the rep speed is, you're not too anal about the rep speed.
Nah.
Okay. All right.
And also, again, like I was a real stickler in the beginning about just doing exactly the program. Don't mess with it. If you mess with it, you're going to do worse. For the most part, that's true. But now that X3 is established as a serious strength training product, like nobody will argue that. Like somebody would be like, well, you know, maybe bands aren't as good as whatever, or all the lengthened, you know, there's always some dickhead who has a double chin and baby arms who's like, you know, pretending to be an expert and, you know, see any fitness YouTube comment section to find those losers. But yeah, I mean, it's just like some people are just lost in the details and they don't really understand what the hell's happening anyway. I'm not as rigid on the principles anymore, because as soon as I got, it was, for me, it was like the 400,000 unit. Once I get 400,000 units in circulation, it's like, okay, now we can have some variability in the program. Like the guys at Westside use X3 sometimes in very explosive manner, because they're trying to like, and they're, you know, they're loading it so it's like you're not even able to do 15 reps. It's like more of like a 1 or 2 rep. Like how hard can you just switch on and explode out of the hole?
Well, this is kind of the same topic. I want to hit on this too before I forget this. Is there anything that you could go back? I think we're on the same page here. Anything you can go back and change, or anything that you might have said with the programming, or either X3 as a product, you're like, maybe I'd change my mind on this. You've already addressed some of them. Anything else that maybe you would alter, change, take back, or deviate from?
Not particularly.
Nothing. Okay. Yeah, because I think you really set the stage for this whole, like, it literally is a whole segment, like a movement of training. And I think a lot of what you were saying still to this day is kind of like gospel for a lot of people in this area. So that's why I was kind of curious. Like, I think you're setting that movement. Kind of related note too, I guess, because you said there's some other developments, and we're seeing the advent of like other, like, competition. There's always been some level of competition with your products. Is there still anything, even with the way the device is, the way it's designed, that's something I kind of hear pushback from? Like, well, it should be this, the bar should be longer, the plate should be longer, or something like that. Any commentary just on that? You still stand by the dimensions and everything, how it's designed?
Yeah, there's a long bar. If you really want to take a wide grip, I mean, you won't grow musculature as fast with a wide grip. Now, there are some giant people, like the guys in the NBA, that tend to like the long bar, but they're also, like, some of the guys we're talking about are like 6'10". So
how about a bigger plate though? I know that's something people right now are probably thinking about that. Could you get a bigger plate? Think about making a bigger plate, or reasons why not to make one?
Yeah, most of the people who want a bigger plate just don't really understand biomechanics. Like, a bigger plate means a wider stance, means a shorter range of motion, means you're really not even working the lengthened range of motion. So it's like, what do you want? Like, if you take a wide grip and bench press, it's a real short press, and you're getting more of the sort of the, I guess, more engaged, even though you're not, because this is more engaged than this is. But they don't understand that. So it's like, I got to make it so I guess there's just certain things I'm going to be rigid on. It's like, I'm not going to encourage you to get a shittier workout, no matter what you think, because the way a lot of these people think is just wrong.
How about that audience of people that I'm probably in this demographic, but I think there's people that are hardcore and like the resistance band, and have totally, for lack of a better word, not to be disrespectful, drinking the Jaquish Kool-Aid in a good way.
You got it right the first time.
Yeah. Oh, Jake, I always mix it up. I just put
a lot of people. Yeah.
So, but what about the guy who's like kind of in the middle? And I think a lot of my whole thing too, with especially the home gym community crowd, I said this before we hit record, that they just don't want to touch band stuff. It seems like it. I mean, they've covered a little bit, but the focus is always on weights. And at the very least, I'm like, it's obviously popular. It's something, for whatever reason, they don't target that demographic or that market as much. For the casual person who either got like a home gym, maybe they go to the gym and they want to bring this along. would you how would someone go about doing, say, a hybrid approach? I'll just use the buzzword here with traditional free weights and an X3 or variable resistance. And so how would that look like? And would you encourage something like that, or how would you implement something like that?
Well,
you probably say, now I already know what you're going to say. You're going to say no, but
I mean, my smart ass answer would be, okay, so the muscles you really want to grow, you use X3 with. When you have a muscle that you don't give a shit about, then lift weights, because that you'll get no results. So,
oh man.
I mean,
well,
I mean, how it up. It's like, people say, that's not exactly true. It's like, really? Like, you walk into a gym, like the people that are at most gyms, they look exactly like the people that are at Pizza Hut. Like, most of the people who have lifted weights.
To be honest, John, I mean, that most of I mean, what's popping in my head right away, people aren't going to like it. A lot of people I see, no one uses resistance. I see very few people built like you, John, that use resistance bands. Again, I'm not seeing the community, so I'm not doing that justice of what you see. I'm not saying the product doesn't see the results, but I think you know what I'm saying. And that's just the demographic, but just not training correctly or not training consistently or as often, experience, whatever.
Or they just have normal person genetics.
Yeah.
I mean, let's face it, the average person
or don't like to eat any food or anything like that. That's their thing. A lot of people just don't like to eat anything with calories, and they're not going to.
They're getting the wrong nutrition. Yeah, it's like I think it's a combination. The vast majority of people don't have the tendon insertion points to engage enough muscle in the lengthened range, so that they're never really in, because the lengthened range when you're lifting a regular weight is the only place you stimulate anything. Keep that in mind. So where you are weakest, where you are least efficient, is the only place when you're lifting weights that you go to fatigue. So you're literally guaranteeing you get the least amount of tissue involved in stimulus. Okay, so then you probably ought to be doing a whole lot of volume, and that has been shown to give some results. But we also have like the Petrella 2008 study, which shows that 23 or 26% of people who lift weights can grow no muscle whatsoever, ever, because of this problem right here.
Yeah.
So, but I mean, I'm sure you've seen people when back before you had, your home gym stuff and you were going to your gym in college or whatever, you saw people coming in day after day, month after month, year after year, never change.
That's true. I think a lot of it, though, if I'm being honest, is just they just weren't honestly doing much effort, or they kind of sporadically come in and out. We'll be on this one for like 20, 15 minutes, but I think I guess I'll say it though, because I think there's a lot of people who might not adopt the X3 because they feel like they just don't agree with what you're saying, possibly. But I think maybe losing sight of that, it is a valuable, useful. I'll call it. You wouldn't call it an accessory tool. I'll call it an accessory tool, maybe to what they traditionally use in a home gym. And I just think that it's, for the price it is. This isn't like a glorified sales pitch. This is something else people kind of like. They say you're kind of shilling for it because it's overpriced, whatever. I always tell them, like, it's like, for the margins of what I've seen from all sorts of stuff, all over the end of things, it's made in the USA. It's a foot plate. The foot plate, the bar, your Paraforce bands, if you get those, all made in the USA. So that alone just says something right there. Yeah. I think right now it's like, this is like if you're going to think about picking an X3, this is the best time of the year to do it, with like your Black Friday sale going on right now. I'll link that down below. But people are spending like $200 something on a curl bar. I'm like, try it out. If you don't like it, you guys can always, there's like you guys still have like a return policy or something like that.
Yeah, you get a month to return it.
Yeah, and it's one of what sold me was just trying it. So at the very least, if you're not full into bands, what made me more of a believer was some of the exercise just feel amazing. So like best bicep curl exercise I still stand by probably ever is that X3 bicep curl. I say X3 because I just like that just locked in dimension.
Yeah, you're absolutely like, that isolation.
But just the way the bands are coming straight down in that narrow stance. When I have a wider plate, I don't like it as much. Overhead pressing feels excellent. Deadlifts feel excellent. I can get into a back squat. Some people don't know how I get in there. I can squeeze myself into it. Legs on their squat belt, amazing. So calves actually awesome, and actually wrist curls. So the only thing I'm not a huge fan, I'm one of the exceptions of like the chest press. I actually like every exercise, honestly. So it's at the very least, there's everything in there. You could rotate something into the equation that for other stuff you're buying. It's also whenever I'm traveling, I throw that thing. Pretty much that's my go-to travel device too.
Yeah.
So,
Dude, I just spent 10 days in Mexico. I work out every day.
can you put that in a I always ask. I always usually if I'm driving somewhere, I'll put it in the car, but I've never actually checked it. You can't TSA check that, can you? Or you can't put it in the. It's
Well,
not
you can
carry on.
check it.
You can't carry
not
on.
a carry-on.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I mean they're
the
like,
club.
oh, it's a bar. You can use it as a
Yeah.
weapon. It's like, what
Yeah.
about a cane?
Right. Yeah.
But
Okay.
arguing with the federal government is never a good idea.
And then you got some new X3 stuff. You got the short bands, and you also got a super small band. Anything else that you want to plug or just get out there that's coming out or on the horizon? You got some stuff in the works you can't talk about.
I got some stuff in the works that
right, cool.
yeah, I'm always prototyping things and working on some new stuff, but nothing I can really talk about yet. But yeah, now of course there's the force bar.
Yep.
We can talk about that. So I would say I tell most people not to buy the force bar. So for those of you who don't know, the force bar is a version of X3. Bluetooth connects to your phone and it records and analyzes all of your workouts. It gives you a total amount of total force created through each set. And that's great because you can always be looking towards creating more force through a set. So like, for example, somebody who's nice and slow and controlled with their repetitions, they're going to have a higher total force number than the guy who just does this kind of thing, like force it out and it kind of springs back on him. You see those guys, it's like, all right, like it reminds me of like the CrossFit pull-up guys where it's like, oh, let me count for you. 0, 0, 0. Yeah. It's like you're not doing shit. But the software in this bar really keeps you honest. It's like, okay, how much work did you do? Because that is much closer to what we know about stimulus and effect. Like how much force went through that muscle? What did that muscle have to create? And as long as you keep that number growing, if it gets bigger every time, you're growing every time. So that happens for people in their first 2 or 3 years of training sort of automatically. It becomes a lot tougher when you become highly developed. So I would recommend the force bar to somebody who's very experienced. It's also double the price, and there's a $15 a month membership to it. So
you also got like now you can go on x3bar.com and you can actually pick which bar you want now, right?
Right. Right. But I would recommend people like if you're new to variable resistance training, you're going to get so much growth that you never expected to get, even if you've been training with weights for 10 plus years. And we have all kinds of people who are X3 only. You really need to join the forum so you can see the other people who are only X3. Is that
a Facebook group or is that on your website?
Facebook group. Yeah, there's 40,000 people.
Yeah. I don't know Facebook.
Really?
I don't know, Big Brother, watch me, John. Come on.
We talk about this. I can appreciate that.
Yeah, see, that's what it's about.
Well, I mean, if you just sign up for it,
I should get on there. Yeah, I should get
only
on there. Yeah.
do like fitness stuff. They're not.
Yeah,
they're not.
Yeah, I should check that out for sure.
Yeah,
well, and actually, that's a huge point. I know the community. I mean, it's like any community. You're gonna. I mean, it's going to be a fanboy community, so that's going to be apparent to anybody. But you actually got a solid community in there. So
yeah,
people are looking for support, like tips and all sorts of just seeing testimonials.
There are 4 amazing trainers. We have a lot of trainers, more than 4, but there's like 4 guys that really stand out. They're 100% X3. They're absolute, like you look at them, they look incredible, better than me. And they're sort of the top trainers. One of them's his name's Kevin Chang. He's a natural competitor. So he's like whatever league he's in, like they don't even let you do TRT, and they test your blood and they put you in a lie detector. Like you can't do like peptides or SARMs or anything in the way they do it. And he's X3 only, and I think he's the best in the world. He's been ranked number 3 in the world for natural bodybuilding. But
what's his name?
Kevin Chang.
Kevin Chang. Okay.
Yeah, he's only been competing for like 2 or 3 years.
There's a Seinfeld joke in there. His name's Chang, so he must be awesome. You just assume if you've ever seen Seinfeld, but
yeah, I've seen that episode. Yeah. That's awesome. But yeah, there's a couple other guys. Daniel Magyar. He's not natural.
I've seen him. Yeah,
little bit above natural.
He's a big dude. Yeah,
he's big. Yeah.
How tall is he? He's like
He's 6'4".
Oh, okay. He looks taller. He dwarfs
Oh,
the X3. Just yeah, he's a big dude.
giant. Yeah, it's funny. I had on my birthday. We were myself, Daniel's one of my best friends. Like we hang out all the time, and my wife and Dr. Sean Baker, because it was after that event in Bratislava, we went to Budapest to just check the city out. Like, I mean, Daniel had been there because he grew up, right by the Hungarian border. And so we went to Budapest and walked around. Like such a cool city. Like the coolest city I've ever been to is Jerusalem. The second coolest city, Budapest. Like you got to check it out. Like wow, like the craziest, most amazing buildings and history and all kinds of stuff. That like it's just we don't really hear about that. The Hungarian Empire like almost took over the world. Like we hear a lot of the Roman Empire, but not so much the Hungarian, but it really cool. So
you probably like their politics there too.
I do. Yeah, they're awesome. Yeah, they're basically, they're conservatives, so they're not.
Yeah.
And they don't have a lot of patience for crazy ideas. Like if someone's whatever.
I'm teeing you up now, John. It's up to you if you want to go that way.
I mean, hey, like if you live in Hungary and you want to cut, they're like, okay, great. You still can't play with kids though.
This is where I have to. Now I'm always thinking like when I upload this, I have to think what box am I checking for the.
Yeah.
So
I won't go any further. I mean, it's when somebody asks me what my politics are, it's like I think Trump's a little too liberal for me, honestly. Like I'm just to the right of Genghis Khan. Like what we allow in modern society is like people just need a beating.
Well, I gotta say this. That's why people gotta appreciate you, whether they love you or hate your ideas or ideologies or politics, whatever. That's I think you're on a top sphere of any business owner company I've talked to for sure. That's just laying it out there. So
thanks, man.
At the very least, hopefully people can respect the fact that you speak your mind.
I would urge people, like, if you just don't like my personality or you don't like my haircut or whatever, okay, don't buy my product. But train with variable resistance. Like, if you train with variable resistance, you will be so much better. Like, that's just hands down. There's West Side Barbell. It's like perfect example. It's a 4,000 square foot gym. And it holds more world records than the United States. Think about that.
Nice.
Yeah, if you took West Side out of the United States, most of the world records come from that one little gym.
That's like I said. Yeah, that's my default when people start knocking bands. So like, yeah, I'm kind of in the middle of the road, but definitely open to everything. And I guess the other thing too is just I mean, everyone hates this response or this point, but I think there's definitely validity in just being adherent to whatever you're doing. But just the fun factor, trying different things. I still just the nostalgia of hearing weights clanging together. I'll never get rid of hearing that noise. So that alone is kind of a big thing for me. But yeah. But all right, John. Well, I'll put everything down. Unless you want to say anything, I'll put everything where to find you. Everyone knows where to find you, I think. But I'll plug everything down below. If there's anything else you want to throw out there.
I will say what I'm going to be doing in the next next few months. I'm going to be shifting my focus a little bit away from like Instagram is always my preferred platform.
Mm-hmm.
The problem with that is you make a great post, you have great engagement. After like a week, you might as well delete it. It's like no one's looking at it anymore. Whereas YouTube, you come up with something great on YouTube and they're evergreen. Like people will keep on getting value out of it. And also, like I see plenty of people who follow like 1,000 accounts on Instagram. Well, how many people do you normally follow on YouTube? Maybe like 4 or 5. Yeah. You're much more.
You would kill it on YouTube. I mean, I think you should just unleash everything you're saying right now. Just be yourself. I think you just be supernova with just like you should just go politics, everything.
I really want to encourage everybody. It's like just listen to me. If you absolutely hate me, just get a printout of my face, put it on a dartboard, tape it to the punching bag. Like I don't give a shit if you like me or I'm just going to give you the facts. I'm going to tell you about what the science says. I'm going to tell you what makes sense, what doesn't. Very little of it is my opinion. Like 99% of what I say is right out of the literature. Yeah, and it's like train with variable resistance. If you don't like me, don't spend money in my company. Don't support me. That's fine. Train with variable resistance. You will be so much better as a result.
Awesome. Let's wrap it up there, John. I appreciate
Cool.
your time.
Awesome, man.
All right. Thanks.
Thanks, Mike.